I recently got myself a new table saw and decided an outfeed table would be my first project, so let's get on with the build. I grabbed a sheet of 3/4 hardwood ply, laid out my measurements and broke it down into manageable pieces. My aim is to have a folding, mobile and user-friendly outfeed table. I cleaned up a bunch of 4x2s at the table saw for the aprons, hinge plates and legs, then ran them through the thicknesser to final dimension. Gluing up what I like to call the hinge plate and adapter block to a flat known surface and then slapping on every clamp I could find. After the glue had dried and I had downed a packet of Doritos, I took the adapter block and tabletop to the table saw for a clean up to its final size. At the back of my table saw, I have a length of angle iron to which I want to attach my adapter block. I measured up, making sure my table will be slightly lower than the saw table, and then proceeded to cut a groove, sneaking up with the fence until I had a snug fit. Then I scrounged around until I found the right size lag bolts. Marking out where to install the lag bolts and drilling out at the drill press. I clamped the adapter block on, and using a drill bit of the same diameter, I was able to dimple the exact center for the holes, then drilled some pilot holes from underneath. It was now easier to drill from above, deburr all the holes and touch up with paint. Using 4 heavy-duty hinges, I laid them out evenly and marked them out with a marking knife and a pencil. Hogged out the bulk of the hinged mortise with a router and cleaning up the corners with a chisel. Finding the centre of the hinge holes with a vex bit, drilling them all out and then driving the screws home. Having drilled out the bottom side of the tabletop with pocket holes, I went around and glued and screwed the apron on. Being end grain near the hinge support, I whacked in a couple of screws for extra support. I trim flushed the top of the apron with a block plane and the sides with a flush trim saw, using painter's tape as a little extra insurance against marring. I now turn my attention to the fold up legs. Using a couple of brackets that lock at 90 degrees, I transferred the hole locations, marked the holes with an awl, pilot drilled, and screwed it into place. Using the same procedure, I attached the legs to each corner of the table. Now that I had the legs attached, I could work out the angle to make the tapers. This helps the legs to nest better when folded up and looks a little nicer. Not having made a tapering jig yet, I went old school and cut the bulk of the tapers with a hand saw and finished up with a plane. On the bottom of the legs I found centre, marked out the nut for the adjustable feet and chiselled out the recess. The brackets for the legs only lock in the open position, so I decided to make up some blocks that needed to be tapered and drilled to accept a penny washer. As for the legs, they will get a magnet to hold the legs in place. To work out where to place the magnets, I tapped in a nail in the centre of the block, snipped the head off, placed in position and closed the legs. This marked exactly where to drill the recess to accept the magnets. I glued and clamped the blocks into position. While I waited for that to dry, I changed it up a bit and downed a pack of twisties. Mixing up some epoxy and slopping it on. I glued in the penny washer, magnets and nuts for the adjustable feet. Things were starting to get heavy, so I decided to add some gas struts to aid in lifting the table. A block was glued and screwed in position, and the mounting brackets for the gas struts were put in place. Mounting the struts to the saw was a little more difficult and even harder to explain. I needed a flexible type of mounting block so that the strut can travel past its stroke length, so that the legs can be deployed and the weight of the table is on the legs, not the struts themselves. Hopefully I can show it better later in the video. I screwed a simple heavy-duty hinge to a block. It took a while to register, but I mounted one of the brackets on backwards, just having another clown moment. Attaching the struts to the flexible block, I marked out its position, transferring the hinge holes with a Sharpie, popping centre, drilling and mounting with countersunk bolts and nuts. After a test run, everything got stripped down. All edges were rounded over. A bunch of sanding happened, 4 coats of water-based poly, and sanding in between. Everything got reassembled, and it was now time to show off my awkward lifting style. I screwed in all the lag bolts from underneath and connected the struts to the pivot block, using a simple cabin hook to hold the table down. When it's unlatched, the table lifts. This is where the pivot block comes in. As you lift the table beyond 180 degrees to deploy the legs, the block pivots, allowing you to travel beyond the length of the struts. So I think I achieved my aim of having a super easy folding outfeed table. Setting up is a breeze. So I hope this inspires you to get out there and make and create. My safety is of most importance, as should yours be. So I tested my table with a small child. Until next time, thanks for watching.